My name is Margaret Holloway. I am 71 years old. The morning my son handed me a one-way plane ticket to a facility called Sunrise Pines Assisted Living in Tucson, Arizona. I was standing in my own kitchen, wearing my own robe, drinking coffee from the mug my late husband Ellis had painted for me in a ceramics class the summer before he died. My son Kevin set the envelope on the counter with both hands, the way you set down something fragile. And then he stepped back and crossed his arms and looked at me with an expression I recognized immediately. It was the expression of a man who had already decided the outcome of a conversation and was simply waiting for the other person to catch up. "Mom," he said, "we think it's time." His wife Dara was standing in the doorway behind him. She was holding her phone, typing something. She did not look up. What they did not know, as Kevin slid that envelope across my kitchen counter, was that 3 weeks earlier I had signed the closing documents on this house. This 4,000-square-foot colonial on Birchwood Drive in Millhaven, Connecticut, the house where Kevin grew up, the house where Ellis died, the house worth $1.4 million. I had already sold it, the wire transfer had already cleared, and I had already booked my own flight, not to Tucson. This is that story. Let me take you back to the beginning, because nothing that happened that morning arrived without warning. I just chose not to show them that I was paying attention. My name is Margaret Elaine Holloway. I am 71 years old. Before I retired at 67, I spent 31 years as a licensed financial planner at a private wealth management firm in Hartford. I managed portfolios for families with assets north of $20 million. I understood trusts, estate law, tax strategy, and the precise legal language that separated a gift from an asset transfer. I raised Kevin in this house, sent him to the University of Vermont, co-signed his first car loan, and gave him the down payment for the brick-front townhouse he and Dara share in Fairfield. That last one came to $82,000, wired directly from my savings account in October 4 years ago. Kevin is 43. He works in regional sales for a medical device company. He travels 4 days out of 7 and makes decent money, though not nearly as much as he implies at family dinners. He married Dara Whitmore 11 years ago at a venue I paid for in full because her parents could not cover their half without going into debt, and I did not want the wedding to start a marriage in the red. Dara is 41. She has a real estate license she rarely uses, and a social media presence centered around home decor and what she calls intentional living. Their house is immaculate. Their guest room has never been offered to me. For the first 6 years of their marriage, things were manageable. Kevin called on Sundays sometimes. Dara was polite at holidays. They came to Millhaven for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I cooked everything, which was fine because I enjoy cooking and the house was big and full, and Ellis had only been gone 4 years and having people in it still helped. Then Ellis's estate settled and the number became clear. Between the house, his life insurance, his pension, and our joint investment accounts, the estate totaled just over $2.3 million. Kevin knew this because I told him directly, which I now understand was my first mistake. Not because the information was dangerous, but because of what it did to the way he looked at me. It was a small shift, nearly imperceptible. The Sunday calls became more frequent. Dara started commenting on my garden and suggesting what I might do with the guest suite. She sent me articles about senior living communities in a tone she described as just something to think about. I thought nothing of it the first time. I filed it away the second. By the third, I had opened a new private email account and started documenting dates and times. The first specific moment I want you to understand happened 14 months before that morning in the kitchen. Kevin and Dara came for the weekend in September. It was the first time they had stayed overnight in 2 years. I made spare ribs, which Kevin has loved since he was 9 years old. Over dinner, Dara set her fork down and said with the practiced warmth of someone who had rehearsed the sentence, "Margaret, have you ever thought about what you want this chapter of your life to look like?" "Like, really thought about it?" I said. "I think about it quite a bit, actually." She smiled. "Because Kevin and I have been doing some research, there are some incredible communities now. Not like the old nursing homes, more like resorts. Pools, classes, social calendars. You'd have people your age around you all the time. I have people my age around me, I said. I play tennis on Tuesday mornings and I'm in a book club that meets every third Thursday. Kevin cleared his throat. Mom, the house is a lot. 4,000 square feet. The yard alone. I have a landscaper. It's expensive to maintain. And if something happened to you, I have a medical alert bracelet, a primary care physician I see quarterly, and a neighbor named Carol who has a key and checks on me twice a week. Dara looked at Kevin. Kevin looked at his spare ribs. The conversation shifted to something else. But I noticed that neither of them ate much after that. And when I cleared the plates, I saw that Dara had been typing on her phone under the table for the last 20 minutes of dinner. The second moment happened 6 months later. I came home from a dental appointment on a Wednesday afternoon in March to find Kevin's car in the driveway. He had not called. He had a key for emergencies, which I had given him because Ellis always said families should be able to reach you if something happened. Kevin was standing in the living room when I walked in. He was not alone. There was a woman with him I had never met, holding a leather portfolio and wearing the kind of blazer that says she works in a professional capacity. Mom, Kevin said. He looked startled, which told me he had expected to be finished before I returned. This is Ellen. She's a real estate consultant. I set my purse on the table by the door. I didn't know we had an appointment. Ellen smiled in a way that suggested she had been in this situation before. Kevin mentioned you might be considering your options with the property. I'm not. A pause. Kevin uncrossed his arms. Mom, I just thought it might be useful to know what the market looks like right now. Just information. Kevin, I said very calmly, this is my house. I didn't ask for a valuation. Please don't schedule consultations about my property without speaking to me first. I looked at Ellen. I'm sorry you drove out here. I won't be selling. Ellen packed her portfolio and left within 4 minutes. Kevin stayed another hour. We did not argue. We had tea and talked about a cousin's upcoming wedding, and he left with a hug that felt like a performance. That night, I called my attorney, a woman named Patricia Osei, who has handled my legal affairs for 16 years, and told her I wanted to discuss a timeline. The third moment was the one that clarified everything. It was a Sunday dinner at Kevin and Dara's house in Fairfield in November, 8 months before the kitchen conversation. There were other guests, Dara's sister Renata and her husband, and a couple they knew from their neighborhood named Brad and Cassie. At some point, after the main course, when the wine had made the conversation loose, Brad said something about his own mother-in-law and her house and the complications of aging parents. Dara leaned in and said, "We're dealing with something similar. Kevin's mom is in this beautiful house in Millhaven, and it's just sitting there, all that value, and she's rattling around in it alone." I was seated 6 feet away. Dara was not whispering. She did not seem to have considered that I might hear her, or that, if I did, the phrase "all that value" would tell me everything I needed to know about how she thought about my home. I picked up my water glass and took a slow sip and said nothing. Across the table, Renata caught my eye. She looked uncomfortable. Good. Discomfort is honest. On the drive home that night, I sat in the parking garage of the Fairfield train station for 22 minutes before starting the car. I was not crying. I was thinking. Specifically, I was thinking about a conversation I had with Patricia Osei 8 months earlier about capital gains treatment on primary residence sales, the exclusion for individuals over 55, and how an irrevocable trust differed from a revocable one in terms of what a family member could contest. I was thinking very clearly and with great precision, the way I used to think before a client meeting, when the stakes were high and the numbers had to be exact. By the time I turned onto the highway, I had made a decision. Not an angry decision. A deliberate one. I was not going to fight my son. I was going to make fighting me irrelevant. Here is what I built in silence over the following 7 months while Kevin and Dara continued their campaign with increasing confidence. The first call I made was to Patricia. We met in her office the second week of December. I told her what I had observed, what I wanted, and what I needed protected. She listened without interrupting, which is one of the reasons I have worked with her for 16 years. Then she said, "So you want to sell, relocate, and ensure the proceeds are structured so that Kevin cannot contest the outcome?" I said yes. She said, "Give me 2 weeks." In February, I contacted a real estate agent named Thomas Breck, who was not from Millhaven and did not know Kevin or Dara. I had found him through a referral from a former colleague in Hartford. I told Thomas I wanted to list the house quietly, what agents call a pocket listing, no public MLS entry, no yard sign, no open house. I told him my target price was $1.35 million and my preferred timeline was 60 to 90 days. Thomas found a buyer in 41 days. A couple from Boston relocating for work. Pre-approved, no contingencies, motivated. We accepted their offer at $1.41 million, slightly above asking. I signed the purchase and sale agreement on a Thursday in late February. The closing was scheduled for April 14th. I said nothing to Kevin. I said nothing to anyone in the family. I continued attending book club on third Thursdays. I continued playing tennis on Tuesday mornings. Carol continued checking in twice a week, and I made her coffee and we talked about her garden, and I did not tell her either, because information told to anyone before the moment is right has a way of traveling. In March, I had 3 conversations with a financial advisor in Nassau, a woman named Claudette Renard, who had been referred to me through my former firm's international network. Claudette specialized in helping retirees establish residency in the Bahamas and structure assets in a way that was fully legal, transparent to the IRS where required, and entirely outside the reach of anyone in Connecticut who might have opinions about how I spent my retirement. We spoke for a combined 6 hours across those 3 calls. By the end of the 3rd call, I had a residency timeline, a property prospect in a community called Ocean Pines on New Providence Island, and a clear picture of what my daily life would look like. Ocean Pines was a gated development of single-story villas clustered around a freshwater pool that faced the Atlantic. The villa I was interested in had 2 bedrooms, an open kitchen, a covered lanai, and a direct path to the beach through a sea grape hedge. It cost $430,000 and came fully furnished. I wired the deposit of $43,000 from my investment account on March 18th. The silver was flexible on closing and agreed to my requested date of April 28th, 2 weeks after Millhaven. I also did something I want to mention specifically, because it matters to who I am and what I have always believed money is for. I transferred $250,000 into a separate trust account with Patricia as trustee. The trust documents specified that the funds were to be distributed in equal portions to 3 organizations: a women's financial literacy nonprofit in Hartford that I had quietly supported for a decade, a scholarship fund for first-generation college students at the university where I got my MBA, and the Millhaven Public Library's Capital Campaign, which had been trying to build a new children's wing for 4 years. I had sat on that library's board for 6 years. I believed in what they were doing. The library did not know the gift was coming. Neither did Kevin. In April, I began the quiet work of closing a house I had lived in for 37 years. I want to be honest about what that felt like. It was not easy. Every room held something. The kitchen where Ellis and I made Sunday breakfasts for 20 years. The back hallway where Kevin measured his height on the doorframe every birthday until he was 16 and decided he was too old for it. The garden where I had planted a white rose bush the spring after Ellis died because he always said white roses were the only flower that looked honest. I took cuttings from that bush and had them rooted at a garden center. They are traveling to Nassau with me in a wooden crate. I am not sentimental about square footage. I am sentimental about what grows. The movers came on April 10th. I had arranged for 2 phases. Phase 1 was the storage unit off Route 91, where I put Ellis's furniture, the items with sentimental value that Kevin might one day want, and the pieces I was not ready to make permanent decisions about. Phase 2 was the shipping container headed to Nassau, which carried my clothes, my books, my kitchen equipment, Ellis's paintings, the ceramics class mug, and the white rose cuttings. The house was essentially empty by April 11th. I had arranged with the buyer's agent to complete the walkthrough on April 13th, one day before closing. I stayed at a hotel in Hartford those final nights. Clean, quiet, a good bed. I slept well. Closing happened at 10 in the morning on April 14th, a Tuesday. I sat across from the buyers, a couple named Henry and Josephine, who were kind and excited and kept looking at each other the way people look at each other when they have found the thing they were looking for. I shook their hands. I wished them well in the house. I meant both things genuinely. Patricia walked out with me after, and we stood in the parking lot for a moment in the April sun. "You are the most organized client I have ever had," she said. "And you are my attorney," I said, "so I take that seriously." We hugged. She told me to call if I needed anything. She told me she expected a photo of the lanai. I told her she would have one within the week. I flew back to Millhaven the next morning. Not to the house, to Kevin and Dara's, which is where Kevin had asked me to come for what he called a family conversation. He had called me 6 days earlier in a tone that told me the conversation had a predetermined shape. He asked if I could come down on the 15th. I said yes without asking why. I already knew why. If you are watching this and you have ever been the person in your family who everyone underestimates, who everyone assumes will simply go along because she always has, who gets managed and handled instead of spoken to directly, drop a comment below. Tell me you are here. Because what happened next in that kitchen is what this story has been building toward from the first paragraph, and I want you to know that what I felt walking into it was not fear. It was patience. Patient the way a chess player is patient. Patient the way a woman who spent 31 years reading financial statements is patient. Patient the way a person is patient when they already know the last move. I arrived at Kevin and Dara's house on the morning of April 15th at 8:45. I drove myself. I wore a blue linen blazer over a white blouse and my good pearl earrings. Not because I was performing anything, but because I believe in dressing the way you wish to be treated. Dara answered the door. She had the particular brightness of someone who has been awake since 6 preparing herself for something. "Margaret, come in." Her hug was a half-second too long. Kevin was in the kitchen. There was coffee on the counter, which I accepted, and a plate of pastries, which I did not. Kevin stood across from me and cleared his throat in the way he has cleared his throat since he was a teenager when he is about to say something he knows is going to land badly. "Mom," he said, "we need to talk about the house." "All right," I said. I wrapped both hands around my mug. "We've been doing a lot of thinking," Kevin said. "And Dara and I both feel that. The house is a lot. And your age, I mean, things can happen." "Things can happen at any age," I said. "Right, but, Mom, we've found a place. A really good place. We actually toured it." He reached for the envelope on the counter. He slid it toward me. I looked at it, but did not pick it up. "Sunrise Pines," he said. "In Tucson. It's beautiful. Independent living, but with medical support on site. And it's a one-way. Because we figured you wouldn't need to fly back if you were settled. A one-way ticket. My son bought me a one-way ticket." Dara appeared in the doorway. She was looking at her phone, but she spoke toward the room. "The room there is actually quite spacious. And they have a pool. And they do these art classes." She said it the way someone reads promotional copy they have memorized, but do not particularly believe. I picked up my coffee mug. I took a sip. Then I set it down and looked at Kevin. "When were you planning to sell the house?" I asked. He blinked. "Well, once you were settled, we'd handle it. The market is good right now." "Who told you the market was good?" I've been looking at comps. Millhaven is up." "Interesting," I said. "And what were you planning to do with the proceeds?" Kevin shifted his weight. "We'd manage them, put them somewhere safe. For your care. For your care." That was the phrase. That was the shape of the plan. My son and his wife We're going to put me in a room in Arizona and sell my house and manage my money for my care. Kevin, I said, I need to tell you something. He straightened. The house sold on April 14th. The room went still. Kevin looked at me the way people look when the ground moves beneath them and they have not been warned. What? I closed the sale yesterday morning at 10 o'clock. The buyers are a couple named Henry and Josephine. They are lovely. They plan to repaint the den, which I think is a good idea. The green was always a little dark. Dara had stopped typing. She was staring at me now with her phone at her side. The sale price was $1.41 million, I continued. After commissions and taxes, my net proceeds were approximately $1.27 million. Patricia Osei handled the transaction. It has been in process since February. Kevin said. February. He said it the way people say a word when they are trying to make it mean something different than it means. February, I confirmed. You've been planning this since February. Longer than that, actually. He put both hands flat on the counter. Mom, where are you going to live? I reached into my bag and set a folder on the counter beside the untouched envelope from Sunrise Pines. I have a villa, I said, in Ocean Pines, New Providence Island, in the Bahamas. 2 bedrooms, an open kitchen, a covered lanai, and a direct path to the beach. I close on April 28th. My flight leaves Hartford on the 26th at 11 in the morning. Kevin stared at the folder. He did not open it. You bought a house, he said. I did, in the Bahamas. Yes, without telling us. You did not tell me about Sunrise Pines until this morning, I said. We were going to discuss it, so was I. I am discussing it now. Dara sat down slowly on a stool near the kitchen island. She looked at the floor. Kevin looked at the folder, then at me, then at the one-way ticket on the counter. I watched him understand the architecture of what had happened. He had built a plan around a house that no longer existed. Mom, he said, and his voice had changed. The rehearsed steadiness was gone. What replaced it was something younger, something less certain. I was trying to help. I know, I said. And I meant it. I believe Kevin believed that. I believe Dara believed some version of it too. But believing you are helping and actually helping are not the same thing. And confusing the two is not kindness. It is convenience. You helped me, I said, by showing me exactly how you saw me, and that helped me make a decision I might have delayed for years if you hadn't accelerated the timeline. He did not speak. I picked up my mug, finished the last of my coffee, and set it in the sink. The one-way ticket, I said, looking at the envelope. I assume it is non-refundable. Kevin did not answer. I hope the travel insurance covers it, I said. Then I picked up my bag, said goodbye to Dara, who still had not looked up from the floor, and walked to the front door. The April air was cold and clean. I drove to the hotel, ordered room service, and called Claudette in Nassau to confirm the closing timeline. She said everything was on schedule. I told her I was looking forward to the lanai. She laughed and said I would not be disappointed. 2 days later, Kevin came to the hotel. He came alone, without Dara, which told me he had done some thinking and wanted to do it without an audience. He sat across from me in the lobby, and he looked tired in the specific way that people look tired when they have been confronted with a version of themselves they did not know existed. I didn't see it as taking over, he said. I saw it as helping. I know, I said, and you didn't ask me how I wanted to be helped. He looked at the table. No, he said, I didn't. Your father always said the most important question in any relationship is not what you want to give, but what the other person needs to receive. He was very good at asking. Kevin's jaw tightened slightly. He missed Ellis too. And whenever I mentioned Ellis in this way, he felt it. I was not trying to hurt him. I was trying to reach him. There is a difference. I should have talked to you, he said. Yes, instead of planning around you. Yes. He was quiet for a moment. Are you happy going there? I thought about the lanai. I thought about the sound the sea grape hedge would make in a warm wind. I thought about the white rose cuttings traveling in their wooden crate, alive and rooted and beginning again. I am going to be very happy, I said, and you are welcome to visit. He looked up at that. You mean that? Kevin, you are my son. Being wrong about something does not stop you from being my son. It just means you have to earn trust back the way any person does. Slowly and honestly. He nodded. He did not cry, which I respected. He said, "I'm sorry, Mom." He said it without qualifiers, without explanation, without Dara's name anywhere near it. It was a clean apology, the kind that takes courage because it doesn't protect the speaker. I accepted it the way I accept all things I am not entirely sure of. With openness and without ceremony, the week before my flight, I did 3 things. I visited Ellis's grave at the cemetery on the north side of Millhaven and sat with him for 40 minutes on a Tuesday afternoon. I told him where I was going. I told him I thought he would find it funny that Kevin had tried to manage me and that I had, characteristically, managed the situation first. I told him I missed him the way you miss someone you have loved for 34 years, which is to say continuously and in every room and at unexpected moments that find you without warning. I put white roses on the headstone. They were from the cuttings I had taken from the garden. A small ceremony entirely for me. The second thing I did was write a letter to Kevin and Dara, not a long letter. 2 pages, handwritten, no anger, no inventory of grievances. I told them what I had built and why. And I told them what I hoped for going forward, which was honesty in place of strategy and questions in place of assumptions. I told them the guest room at Ocean Pines had a good bed and that I hoped they would use it. I left the letter at the hotel front desk to be mailed after my departure. The third thing I did was call Carol, my neighbor, the woman who had a key and checked on me twice a week for the past 2 years. I invited her to lunch at the Italian place on Main Street that we both liked. I told her over linguine that I was leaving and why. She cried a little, which I had expected. She told me Ellis would have loved the Bahamas. I told her he would have complained about the humidity and secretly loved every second. She laughed. I promised a video call monthly. I will keep that promise. On the morning of April 26th, I left the hotel at 8:45. My bags were packed and tagged and waiting in the lobby. I had a car service arranged to Hartford. The morning was cold and still. The kind of April morning that has not yet remembered it is supposed to become spring. I sat in the back of the car and watched Millhaven pass the window slowly, the way a place passes when you are not rushing through it. The library with its campaign sign in front. The tennis courts where I had played every Tuesday for 12 years. The coffee shop where Ellis and I used to go on Saturday mornings when Kevin was at soccer practice, and the house was briefly, peacefully ours. I did not cry. I did not need to. The life I had lived there was real and full and mine. Taking it with me did not require tears. It required memory, which I have in abundance. At the airport, I checked my bags and went through security and found a seat at my gate with a cup of tea. I opened my phone to a message from Claudette. Villa is ready. Lanai has good light this time of year. Welcome to the Bahamas, Margaret. I typed back 2 words, on my way. Then I put my phone in my bag and watched the planes move on the tarmac, each one pointed somewhere. Each one carrying someone who had decided that where they were going mattered more than what they were leaving behind. Here is what I know now, from the lanai, with the sound of the Atlantic behind me and the white rose cuttings in their new soil beside the sea grape hedge. I know that the people who love you most will sometimes love you in the wrong direction. They will love you toward what is convenient for them and call it concern. They will manage the variables of your life because they are afraid, and fear makes people reach for control. Kevin is not a villain. He is a man who lost his father and spent 4 years becoming quietly terrified that he would lose his mother too, and rather than sit with that fear and tell me about it honestly, he tried to arrange the world so that losing me would hurt less. I understand that. I do not excuse it, but I understand it. Understanding is not the same as acceptance. It is simply the ability to see a thing clearly without needing it to be different in order to move forward. What I want to say to you, if you are watching this and you have a Kevin in your life, or a Dara, or a family member who looks at your home and sees an asset instead of looking at you and seeing a person, you are not required to wait for permission to make your own life. You are not required to be managed. You are not required to go where someone else's plan puts you simply because they have arranged the ticket. Your competence does not expire. Your right to choose your own next chapter does not require their approval. And the quiet, patient, methodical work of making your own decision on your own timeline, in your own way, without announcement or argument, is one of the most powerful things a person can do. I built my new life in silence, not as a secret, not as revenge, as a decision. Those are different things. And the difference matters. Ellis used to say, whenever I was getting ready for a difficult client meeting, you are the most prepared person in any room you walk into. Remember that. I thought about that sentence often over those 7 months. I thought about it the morning Kevin slid the envelope across my kitchen counter. I thought about it while I was signing closing documents in Patricia's office. I thought about it on the plane, 35,000 feet over the ocean, flying toward a life I had built while no one was looking. I am on the lanai right now, and the light is coming in at an angle that turns the water a color that has no useful name in English. There is a fishing boat somewhere out there moving slowly to the north. The white rose cuttings are establishing themselves. They take time. Everything worth keeping takes time. I have a standing Tuesday morning tennis lesson with a woman named Gloria who has lived here for 8 years and who laughs like someone who has long since stopped worrying about what other people think. We have coffee afterward and talk about everything and nothing. It is, I will tell you plainly, the most uncomplicated friendship I have had in a decade. Kevin called me last Sunday. He asked how the lanai was. I told him the light was remarkable. He was quiet for a moment and then he said, I think Dad would have loved it. I said, he would have complained about the humidity. Kevin laughed. It was the first real laugh I had heard from him in 4 years. We are not fixed. Families that have done what ours did are not fixed quickly or cleanly. But we have started, and starting is always the hardest part. I want to ask you one thing before I go. If someone in your life has been treating your future like a logistics problem they get to solve without you, what would it take for you to make your own plan first? Not in anger, not to punish them, but simply because your life belongs to you and the next chapter deserves to be written in your handwriting. Drop your answer in the comments. I read everyone. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this story meant something to you, I want you to know that it was told specifically for the woman who is sitting somewhere right now, being underestimated by someone who should know better. She is the reason this channel exists. She is the reason I keep telling these stories with as much honesty and care as I can give them. If you are her today, you are not alone and you are not powerless. Subscribe to Revenge Diary so you do not miss a single story. Because on this channel, the quietest women always have the last word.